do it. Oh, hi guys, if you're just tuning in, give it a minute. As usual, just waiting for the stream features to load up and for me to check everything's running okay, and then I can get cracking telling you all about today's subject, which is the Nintendo Gamecube and the GC Loader PNP device. Bear with me a few minutes and we'll start chatting. Just waiting for everything to start booting up. If you are in the room and you are on chat, whether you're joining me on Twitch, YouTube or Facebook, please say hi in the chat. Let me know that it's running okay. And the first time we get a message, I will start talking properly. So just give it a couple of minutes, guys. Andy Johnson, how's it going? Nez, you alright, mate? Good stuff. Good to see you there, guys. Hope you're having a good day. Right, I think we're all okay. We could be in business, so let me just take a swig of the old orange Pepsi, or peach squash as I like to call it. Wet me whistle, and then I can start yakking. Oh, I'm dry. Just had my dinner. Meatballs and pasta. So I've got the meat sweats going on at the moment. I apologise if the light flaring behind me is a little bit of a problem. For some reason my camera doesn't want to balance properly today. I know it's not the ideal conditions for doing these videos, but until I get my spare room sorted out, this is about as good as my streams are going to get as far as filming me is concerned. But we should be okay anyway. We usually pass it off. How's it going, Jamie? You alright, fella? Good to see you on. Right, I think there's enough of you here now, so might as well start chatting. I'm just going to turn the volume down the TV for a minute. Right, hi, how you doing? Welcome to another Yamio Retro Gaming live stream. I did promise I'll be doing 2 this week. They were supposed to be coming staggered over a couple of weeks, but busy week last week after my birthday and other things going on, I just didn't get a chance to. So today, while the missus is out at Zumba or whatever it is she's doing, I'm going to be doing a video now. And this is something I meant to talk about a couple of weeks ago, and just didn't get around to it. This one I've actually had prepared for a little while. I'm just going to zoom out on the old camera here so you can see what we're talking about. And it is the Nintendo Gamecube, and more specifically, the Nintendo Gamecube's brand new optical drive emulator device, which is just mounted inside here, the GC Loader PNP. Now, the reason this is called the PNP, the GC Loader came out, I believe, the back end of 2019, and it's a device which basically fully replaces the disk drive inside the GameCube. Now, GameCube disk drives aren't exactly known for failing, like some of the others, but it is one of those systems, unfortunately, that hasn't had its own optical drive solution for no kind of flash device. The closest you could actually get was using a hacked memory card that would accept an SD card, and then you would need to load some kind of boot disk to be able to force loading it, and then you could basically load games off an SD card. However, the problem is that the memory card interfaces on the GameCube aren't the fastest. Reading from an SD card isn't the fastest by default, and you'd find a lot of games would stutter. Some of it was dependent on the actual firmware that was a part of the Swiss software, which is basically how you load and launch your games. That's come on a long way, and since the GC Loader was in production, they've worked a lot more on Swiss because they've decided to go with that software as the interface. So the GC Loader interface was launched, like I say, I think it was the very end of last year. It was on pre-order, but the problem was the way you actually had to interface it onto the board was you had to use like a drag soldering kind of flat ribbon thing that you had to solder onto the board and then solder onto the device, and that was rather awkward for novices, and not an ideal solution if you want to be able to easily remove it and move it between devices. So what they did is they've basically gone back to the drawing board and they've modified the system slightly, And I'm going to take the lid off the GameCube now, and I'm going to show you what's going on inside. So I'll just turn it off for a second. Excuse me. And if I drop the camera down a bit, so we can see what's going on. Bear with me. There we go. Right. I'll try not to knock the camera over while I'm doing this. Well, basically, inside the GameCube, for anybody who hasn't done this, and here's one I prepared earlier in proper Blue Peter style, we'll just lift the lid off, and you can see what's going on inside. So, the GameCube is quite a simplistic beast in terms of construction, and a lot more accessible than a lot of Nintendo products in the past. You've got your motherboard, which is mounted inside the base of the console down here, which is just screwed in a few places. You've got a removable front panel, which has got your ports and your memory cards and everything on. You've got a removable rear panel, which obviously has got your outputs and everything on. And then what will sit on top is the actual DVD drive, which obviously ran the 8cm DVDs. And yeah, it just basically sits on top of the device here and plugs into a proprietary slot that goes through this RF shield here onto the motherboard. And so obviously if you had a broken disk drive, it was very, very easy to replace. It also meant that as far as using mod chips go, it was very simple to do, because you could lift the entire drive off, solder the chip onto the drive, and just pop it back on. Very easy to do. I used to have a couple of chipped GameCubes, but unfortunately, finding reliable media and burning the discs is a little bit problematic. I did get some working burns, but they weren't exactly perfect, and obviously they do require tweaking the pots on the actual disk drive, which can unfortunately damage your disk drive. So inevitably, like all CD-based systems or DVD-based systems, the drives are going to fail. And so optical drive emulators, much like the Saturn one that I did the other day, are the way to go. And we've waited so long for one, and finally this GC Loader came along, but the soldering thing was a problem. So what they've done with this new version, the PNP, which stands for GC Loader Plug and Play, is you just have to basically pull off the unscrew and pull off the optical drive. Get rid of that out of the way. That's been actually been sold on. I sold that on to somebody because they need a replacement unit for theirs. And then this is the device here. This is the GC Loader, and it literally just sits on top of there. And there's actually a section that pokes through the heat shield there, and it just plugs straight onto it now, so you don't actually need to do any kind of soldering. And it's got an SD card slot on there, which is going to be kind of difficult to see unless I can pick this up somehow. So bear with me just a second. I'll try and tip this up so you can see it. So there's a screw falling out. You should just be able to make out an SD card slot at the back of the device just there, with a ribbon cable coming off of it. Now the reason it's got a ribbon cable coming off it is because I've actually ordered an extra part for mine, which is quite cool. And it's this section here. And this is a complete 3D printed case that somebody does on eBay, I think it was I got it from. Several people doing it, and I think you can download the plans for it on Makerspace now. But the person who was doing these is doing them very well. It's not just a 3D printed part. It's got a two-stage section. So the lower stage is made of this white material here, which is pretty heavy-duty stuff, and it just screws directly into the base. The upper section you can actually choose to have in several colours to match the GameCube that you're using. Now I was going to have this in a colour to match, because I have got a purple GameCube as well. But what I figured was, if I ever want to move this to a different GameCube, if I have it colour coded, it's not going to look right in another one. Like I've had a friend who's had one done, and he's had this printed in orange because he's got one of the nice Spice Orange GameCubes. Now I have actually got a Spice Orange GameCube coming that I really want to use in place of this, because I like the orange ones. But I didn't want to have the orange in case I ever move it to a different one, again like a limited edition. So I've had it done in black. It's the simplest thing to do, and it's perfectly moulded to fit exactly in the space, in the cavity that's left in the lid of the GameCube here. So it does fit completely perfectly. There's no trimming or no excess I had to cut off. And the cool thing is that what they've done is they've integrated an SD card extension module into there. So there's an SD card device there. I'm just checking it is all fully off. And the SD card just pops into the top there, and you can see the SD card slot there. That attaches by a ribbon cable, which you do have to kind of twist round rather awkwardly, admittedly, and that goes into the SD card slot on the device, and that's how it extends the SD card slot up to the regular disk access point. Now, that is great for people who will be switching SD cards often. Me personally, I won't need to. They do several versions of this where you can actually get them with slots in the side here, here, and here, so you can actually swap the SD card over, which is good if you want to have like complete sets and you want to have spare SD cards and just swap them over for the different regions, for example. But me personally, I know what I like and I know what I want to play. And so I've just done my usual trick, which is gone for the biggest SD card I can possibly get, which, well, for an affordable price, which is 256 gigabytes, just like I did in my Saturn. And thankfully, because the GameCube never had such massive ROM sets anyway, that 256 gigabyte has been pretty much big enough for the entire American set, and I have gone with the American set, and I'll explain why in a minute. The entire American set, a few PAL exclusives, and a load of Japanese games that I care about as well. And I think there's even space to spare on here, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, I did this a few weeks ago, and basically everything I could possibly want is on there. And this 256 gigabyte it's plenty. So if you're going to go down this route, just get a 256 gigabyte card, and I think you'll be set. Price wise, you're looking at £90 for the GC Loader PNP. I think it was £90 for the standard version originally, and then they came out with the PNP just a few months ago on pre-order. And thankfully, Gareth off my team ordered two, so he sold me the second one. And thankfully, I've been able to get one of these and jump the queue basically. And I've got the PNP version here, and I only paid £90 for that, so I think that's about the right price. And then this section here, I can't remember exactly. I think it was either 20 or £30 for this printed section here, and it's really good quality material. It's not got loads of like sticky up shavy bits or anything like that. It is slightly patterned and textured on top. It's not completely smooth, but he ordered the orange one and he showed me, and the colour match is perfect. So if you've got like the silver GameCube, the purple GameCube, they can do it in that colour. And this one here is absolutely fantastic. So we're going to pop this back on the top now and try not to rattle it around too much. Yeah, the reason I'm switching GameCubes, in case you're wondering, this is, I've had a few GameCubes in the past. Well, I've had a lot of GameCubes in the past, if I'm being honest. And unfortunately, they've gone AWOL through the process of doing the events and that. They end up in other people's boxes, other people take them on by accident off the team. Always happens, can't really be avoided. And all I'm left with at the moment is I had a purple one that was chipped, went missing, a black one that I couldn't find recently, even though I could find all the kit for it. And now all I've got left is this one GameCube, and unfortunately it's a little bit faded on the front here. You can see a little bit of yellowing going on the front panel. But thankfully, like I say, I'm getting an orange GameCube now, and when I do, I will take the drive out of that, move that into this, and then I will move this drive, this GC Loader here, into the new GameCube, and I shall have the Spice Orange GameCube just the way I wanted it. So, but anyway, this is fine for now. So let's have a quick look at your questions before I jump onto the operations, show what's going on. Yeah, loving these disk drive emulators. Yes, Rich, they're definitely the way to go, mate. If you're not a big shelf collector like me and you'd rather just play the games rather than just have them sat on the shelf, don't go down the expensive route of buying all the games. Thankfully, the GameCube, not that expensive a platform to collect for, but finding some of the more obscure titles, you might be hard pressed to find them available in the region that you want them. But yeah, the GameCube, it was definitely a system that was missing having the an optical drive emulator, and I'm really pleased this has now finally come out, because this is the last of the kind of what I like to call the A1 consoles that needed that kind of solution. And I've been really happy about this. I won't actually be selling my GameCube collection because it's one of those collections I've actually had since brand new, and I'd rather hang on to them for that reason. I never had that many GameCube games anyway, but I shall hang on to them. Plus, I've got a Panasonic Q, and the Panasonic Q doesn't have a great solution available for it well, if any. You can mod chip it, but it's risky, and so I'd rather keep my games, and you can actually run those games using the freeloader disc. So if I want to play PAL games on my Panasonic Q, I can actually do that. So I've hung on to them. Andy says GameCube prices are going up lately. It wouldn't surprise me, mate. People are moving on to new systems now, so it wouldn't surprise me that they're creeping up a bit. Um, so yeah, just need a custom jewel on there, Craig. Yeah, it'd have been nice too, mate, but not on this console. Not on this console. Audio streaming is nice too. Yeah, I'll come on to the operation of it now. Right, so as far as what the system does, let's take a quick look at it. So I've got this hooked up through the standard cables at the moment. I haven't got the high def cables for this, and I wouldn't want to go to that expense. And I'm not one of these purists who seeks out super high pixel quality and things like that. I just like to play the games, you know, and as long as I can get a decent, stable picture, I'm really happy with it. So we've got standard composite out going from this. And I'm using my, as I've been going to do for all of my videos now, I'm doing it with my PS2 TV. So let's adjust the camera back up and get it into shot, and then I can talk about what it does. Give me a second to straighten this up, guys, and zoom in. There we go. And if I turn this on in just a second, well, really, I've adjusted this a bit too much. Oh, too much now. Let's turn this on. See where we go. So now what we've got, instead of the GameCube loading screen, it basically jumps ahead of that because it's so quick loading. And when you load up the GameCube now, this is what you're presented with. So the way you have to set this up is you actually have to set up your system much like you would do if you were using SD card loading previously, using a boot disk like the Action Replay, or there was another one I think that allowed you to do it. Basically, you're doing exactly the same thing. So you set up your card with Swiss, but what you do is you're downloading one of the very later revisions of Swiss. They've run a lot of updates in the last 12 months in anticipation of GC Loader coming out to improve compatibility. And one of the biggest things they've done, from what I can tell, I don't have much basis for comparison because I never ran Swiss personally myself, was that they've improved compatibility with some of the games, and they've improved the audio and video streaming. Because you're reading from an SD card, and because the interface is kind of slow through the memory card slots, like I explained, much like with the PS2 memory card loading with Freem at boot, you end up with a problem. You end up with a problem by where it can't access the data fast enough, and while you're playing the game in real time, so that the video and the audio stutters. So what they've done, because the GC Loader now replaces the optical drive, I believe the connection, the interface there is a lot faster, and so yes, you've still got the delay of it being an SD card and the read speeds involved with your SD card, but you're no longer strangled by the slower access ports of the memory card slots. It's now going straight through where the optical drive would read, and so it reads a lot faster. So a lot of the audio and video stuttering has now gone from this. I just noticed on there, Dave says to update my Swiss. I did do this a couple of weeks ago, mate. I will update it again, but I've got it all set up working, and I didn't want to be doing all that last minute before I did this video today. I'm sure this is what I mean. Dave's saying to update my Swiss. This was only updated a few weeks ago, and at that time, the last working version, as you can see at the top, was dated 6th of February, I think it was. Was it? I think it might have been. It might have been early June, actually. I'm not sure what the time there is related to the hack. Sorry, the time and date. Yeah, sorry. The date on this Swiss, I think, was June. There's probably a new version out now because they're moving it along really fast right now. And there's been lots of revisions in the last 6 months alone. So like I say, you set up, you drop your custom boot doll onto your SD card, and then you can drop on all of your games. And just like when you run it from the SD card, you need to run it in the ISO format ideally. I think it also recognises .gcm file format as well, and it does thankfully recognise compressed ISOs. Now I downloaded the full ISO set, which obviously was going to take it way too big for what I needed, and then I looked and I realised that it does prefer ISO as a format, but it does actually accept compressed GCMs, which you then rename to .iso, and that's exactly what I've done. Now, a lot of the games are a lot smaller than the 1.3 gigabyte or whatever the DVD size was. So a lot of games are like 200, 300 megabytes. It compresses them down massively. So that's a great way of saving space, and that's how I've been able to get such a complete set on here. Right, so going down the list, you can see here what I've done is I've basically installed the complete American set on here, and you should just about be able to make out on this screen, even though it's slightly lower resolution, you should just be able to see the file size on the right hand side there. So most of these nearly take up a complete DVD. You can see 1.25 gigabytes, 1.32 gigabytes. By that I mean mini DVD, of course. Uh, 1.28 gigabyte. I think 1.5 gigabyte is the official capacity of the smaller DVDs. But obviously the file size on there, I think maximum was 1.38 or something like that. And yeah, so but a lot of these are actually running to a lot smaller, such as 18 wheeler Pro Trucker. It's only 270 megabytes. So you're saving a ton of space. Now the reason I've gone with the American ROM set is because, like a lot of the other optical drive interfaces, they allow you to make a system basically region free. It will read ISOs from any region and it will play them. Unlike some of the older consoles, however, the GameCube was released at the same time as the PS2, where everything was kind of going into like a transition period, where the old TVs were going out, the new standards were coming in, the worldwide marketplace was more of a thing, and obviously they wanted to start supporting the higher resolutions and interlaced progressive, larger resolution displays. So that basically means that even though this is a UK GameCube and it should only be rated for 50 hertz games or whatever, most GameCube games, especially PAL GameCube games, gave the choice to run them in 60 hertz anyway, and most of the 60 hertz games just run natively. So there was no point me actually putting on a UK set on here, unless there's any games that I'm particularly attached to, which I'm not, that had like a localization that was common for the European market. I would have left those on here. Most of the games, the American versions are exactly the same, and so I've just downloaded the American versions because the American versions tend to be a little bit smaller in file size, or have 60 hertz built in straight at the box. And the reason they're a bit smaller is because they don't contain all the European languages. A lot of the European PAL versions, you'd have to select your region on startup, and the localization packs for all the text and in-game audio and things like that would have been included on a PAL version, so that ups the file size. With the American sets, you don't have that. Sometimes there'll be a language choice, usually English and Spanish, because Spanish being obviously the most major spoken language next to English over there. But it means the file sizes are a lot smaller, so I've gone with the complete American set. It just made the most sense. So scrolling down, you can see everything there. There's a couple of things. Obviously, what I have got on there as the European version is the boot doll for the actual Swiss program. You do need to use the boot.dol file for your region on the actual card. You can't get around that. So if you had an American GameCube, you'd have to use the American boot doll. If you had the Japanese one, you have to use the Japanese boot doll. And when I move this over to my Spice Orange GameCube, I will actually change that boot doll to the Japanese one. So yeah, as far as the game list goes, you can see I've got a pretty concise list on here. All the games I give a shit about are on here, and obviously because they're all like sub 1 gigabyte, it's allowed me to get pretty much everything on here. You can see on the left hand side there how much space I've got left. 238 gigabyte taken up, still 14.5 gigabyte free, and that's with everything on there that I really care about. So I mean, this is pretty much the the definitive list of what's on there. The only thing I've left out, just like with my other sets, is like throwaway football games, the yearly refresher FIFA, crap like that. I don't care about those at all, so they're just not on here. It's just stuff to take up space that will never ever be played. But yeah, we've got plenty of other games on here though. All the Zeldas are there. The Lego Star Wars is Lotus Challenge, Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion, a very small file actually, only 186 megabytes. Andy Johnson, now Dave, someone said there, oh, Animal Crossing's only like 20 megabyte. Yeah, it's a tiny file. Um, for some reason, I've got Mario Golf on there twice. I don't know why. I'll have to delete one of those. But all the early Mario parties are on here. Just basically the complete list is on here. And like I say, when you load it, it loads straight into this. No messing about. You can also change the format of this slightly if you want something a little bit more graphical. I mean, this is plenty graphical to me because you've got like the banners, the actual graphical banner, and the text, and the region, and everything's there you need to see. It's plenty big enough to follow. But you can, optionally, if you want to, let me just work out, there we go, go down to settings at the bottom, and you can see we've got a load of settings we can mess with. And one of those, if I find the right one, is this, and we can change it to carousel. And if we go to save and exit, should now reload in a second if it's saved. There we go. Should now reload in a carousel. Now this now is a lot more like the cover flow you would expect to see on the Wii. If you see my video on modifying the Wii with USB loaded GX, you can actually set up a cover flow where it scrolls the cover art. I think this is all you can do with it for now. I don't think you can actually use cover art, but you get a bigger representation of the banner, and it just moves the orientation of the text or anything not in focus to vertical. So you get a little more information, like little synopsis of the game, the region it's in. Obviously, Micro Machines there is a European region game because there was an American release. Um, but yeah, you get a little bit more information. If you prefer it, you can just go that way with it. I'm quite happy with the other version. I'll tell you exactly why I'm quite happy with the other version for now. The way Swiss actually saves the information, there's a few ways you can actually save your settings. You can't save it to the memory card, unfortunately. You can only save your options for the way Swiss boots to the SD card that Swiss boots from, if you're using it Swiss through the front, or if you had an extra SD card plugged into the expansion port on the bottom of the console. Recently, they came out with an SD card reader that goes into the expansion slot, because the way Swiss works normally is you'd have one SD card with a memory card adapter into one of your memory card slots, which has got the Swiss boot program on it, because that needed to be less than 2 gigabytes. And then you'd need a secondary SD card with all your ROMs on that you'd need to swap out or have in the second memory card slot. So to do away with a lot of that and changing over the SD cards, they came out with this one that goes on the bottom. You still needed some kind of boot device, so you either needed an action replay or a mod chip to get it to boot that way, but it meant you wouldn't need to have something sticking out the front of your system. Now, because obviously the SD card and Swiss is being done through the GC Loader, they haven't yet sorted out a way to save your settings onto that SD card. It might be in the newer versions. Dave said to update. I'll check it out, but it's not on this version, so I can't save the settings. So even though I've changed it to carousel mode now, any other changes I make, like per game, I can't actually save those settings anything more than temporarily, because if I try to save it to my memory card, it corrupts my memory card. You can save it to a memory card, but it corrupts the memory card and you can't load any of your saves. So I'm just fine with it as default. I'm quite happy with that. There's not many options I want to change anyway. Yeah, you can do that, Dave. If I go into the options now, I'll quickly show you. If I go to the options here, you can see, I mean, you've got your things to mess with, like stereo, mono sound, all that stuff. The SD IDE speed, you can leave that at 32 megahertz, the higher read speed. For modern SD cards, it can read at the faster speeds no problem. So you can stick that at 32 megahertz and have no problem with it. Swift video mode there, obviously you can set it to force to be into a certain resolution on boot up. I leave it at auto because obviously my GameCube will be used on several different TVs, and I don't want to set it to a resolution that is trying to force on a TV that can't support it. So I'll leave that on auto because that just works for my needs. Like I say, I'm not a pixel purist like a lot of you out there, so I'm completely happy with that. But you can, if you want to, force it to 480i, 480p, 576i or 576p, which is basically PAL resolutions. So I just leave it at auto and I just select it as I need it. If I was playing for any length of time at home, I'd probably set the optimum one, but I'm fine with that. In-game reset, you can actually set up a command system to basically reset from the controller, and again you need to be able to save your options that way. The thing is, it doesn't actually work for very many games anyway, much like the PS2 soft reset. It doesn't work on that many games, and it can cause problems with your saves and things like that. So I don't mess around with that. With this system, I'm quite happy to just hit reset and go back to it. You can see here where it says configuration device, it gives me a few options. So you can save things to memory card slot A, memory card slot B, which I think I stupidly left it set up that way. So I think I've just corrupted what few saves I had on here, but I didn't have many anyway, to be fair. But you can set it to obviously an SD card in slot A or slot B. IDXE in slot A or slot B, and you can actually set it to an SD card in SP2. SP2 is the service port 2 on the bottom of your GameCube. That's where I mentioned that new device comes to. If you wanted to just get one of those, because they are very cheap, they're only about 15 quid, you could buy one of those, permanently set it in the bottom with a tiny SD card, just to save your settings for this. I might actually end up doing that with my Spice Orange GameCube. At least that way all configuration settings will save into there, and it'll stop me from overwriting my memory card by accident like I just did. But yeah, so you can set it to a few different options there. AV compatibility, I'm not entirely sure what that is. There's a few little like admin things on here. You'll never mess with yourself, so I'll leave them be. But I'm going to go back to standard because that's, you know, what I know anyway. And yeah, so I think there's a couple of other options you can go to. If I go down to next at the bottom there, reset that to stereo. Annoyingly, you can't scroll off the top and go to the bottom, so go to the next page. Yeah, so you can set up your network settings and save those in by default on here. So you don't actually need to go back to the GameCube interface if you don't want to. You can do several things here with the USB Gecko. The USB Gecko is what I was talking about, the SD card adapter that goes in your memory card slot. So you can still use those in conjunction with this if you want to. There we go. So you've got some default video settings here. You can do a few more things. So you can force the video mode for the actual games. The one that was on the previous menu is just for the Swiss menu that you're looking at here. This is forcing the video mode for the actual games themselves. And you've got a few options there you can do. You can do 240p, but I think you must have the high def leads to be able to do the 240p output, else it won't work. 288p I'm running for. It must be like the PAL equivalent of that. But yeah, I'm not going to force any of those because, again, I don't want to try and force this TV to display something it can't do. Force horizontal scale, so you can change the size on the screen. You can change the offsets, you can change the dithering, you can even affect the filters and stuff like that. So some of these options here are the kind of things you'd only really have access to within an emulator normally. Forcing widescreen, I believe there's several games that works with, unlike the PS2 where quite a lot of games had inbuilt widescreen support. GameCube games didn't all have a widescreen option. You can force it to do that, but it creates quite a lot of bugs from what I've seen. I might look into that a little bit more for certain games that I want to play that way. But to be honest, generally when I have the GameCube set up, I prefer to having it a 4:3 aspect ratio because we tend to play multiplayer games, and quite a lot of the multiplayer games don't look quite right when you're stretching the screen. And there you go, invert the camera stick, emulate the read speed. Don't really need to mess around with any of those. These things are nice to have, but they're not stuff. They're not the kind of thing you're going to use very often. Let's not beat around the bush. So just jump back to our menu here, let it reset to where it was. Just have a quick look at your comments while it's reloading itself there. Yeah, you have to check it's enabled in the options. The only way to get in-game reset to. Yeah. How's it going, Gareth? You alright, mate? I've speaking about you just, mate. I don't know if you've set your GameCube up yet, Gareth, with your GC Loader, but basically I'm just doing everything here that like you told me to do because you got all yours setting up, and this is what I'm showing everyone now the way I've done mine. Yeah, grabbing a small micro SD card just for that purpose. Yeah, the SD to SP2 devices, like I say, they're tiny little chips that have just got a micro SD card slot. And if you get one of those, you put it into your SP2 port on the bottom of your console. You can just save all your options to that. I reckon they'll do something with Swiss at some point by where you can save your options to the memory card, sorry, to the actual SD card rather than just the memory card slots or the SP2 slot. But yeah, for now that's the way you've got to do it, and I will probably do it that way just in case. That way I can carry those things over to new consoles very easily. Yeah, they are super cheap. Never had any issues with the in-game reset using the SD to SP2. Might be the type of games I'm playing, Andy, I don't know. I'm going off more what I read, and a few of the ones I tried didn't quite work the way I wanted them to. I might enable that, but again, there's no point in enabling all those because I can't save the options at the moment without sacrificing my memory card. I've got a couple of memory cards, but yeah, I don't want to mess about with all the options yet. When I start playing this again, I start saving my games. I don't want to risk corrupting my memory card, so I'll leave the options as they are for now. And then when I start using it at events, I'll probably set that up so you can do the in-game reset. I believe the command is something like a bit like the PS2. I think you hold both the shoulder buttons, press start, and then one of the other buttons and down at the same time. Quite a lot of things, so nothing you press by accident. And right, so I might as well show you a couple of games running and just show you like how efficient it is and how well they actually run. So here we go. Right, so Andy just says there you have to have Swiss on the SD to SP2 card as well, else it doesn't work properly. Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll improve a lot of this as time goes on. They've already made a lot of changes to Swiss. The last time I looked at Swiss, it was version 0.2, which was going back way back. I don't think they're even reaching the version 1 point something yet. So yeah, we'll fire up some token games that people are obviously going to want to see how they run. Some of the more popular games. One of the most popular games, of course, for this, you can scroll faster with the shoulder buttons. I'm being a dick here. There we go. So I'm going the wrong bloody way here. It's not starting with S. Everything doesn't start with Super on this one. And here we go. Mario Kart Double Dash. This game, of course, we have out a lot at the events. And obviously the last couple of events, big revivals we did, we had this set up with 8 GameCubes and 8 screens on 8-player. Awesome way to do it. We'll be doing that again, but we'll be doing it with F-Zero, I think, next time, because I think you can have 8-player multiplayer on that the same way. So we'll be doing that at the next event, I think. But yeah, just to show you what the boot times are like and what the performance is like. Let's turn the volume up a touch. Where have we gone? There we go. So you press A to do it, and then obviously from here you got a few. You can set settings per game there. You can see at the bottom. You can activate cheats. You have to actually load on cheat codes onto here, and then you can preset it to load it up that way. But yeah, I'm not going to mess around with any of that right now. I've just got it set up by default. It's just basically Playing the game as it was meant to be played at NTSC resolution, I think. There you go, NTSC 480 interlaced. And like I say, the loading's pretty quick, you know what I mean? And you can see there's no problem there with the FM. Well, I think this is actually being rendered in real time. It's not actually FMV, but I know from playing some of the. I did actually mess around with Swiss early on. I can tell you that when this used to read from an SD card that was in the memory card slot A on the early versions of Swiss, this intro would stutter like fuck. The music would stutter, the video would stutter. And that just runs a treat. We'll go into a game just to show you the loading times. We might as well go for the full speed, eh? I can't remember who my favourite characters were on this. I think I used to have Cooper Paratrooper, so you get the triple red shells, and then it might have been. It's been so long since I played it. I'm trying to think who my favourite characters were. Rowie Yoshi, and yeah, we'll go with the Yoshi cart. This intro as well. This intro would stutter whenever you'd run it from an SD card quite badly. It's perfect now through the GC Loader. I think the SD card does matter as well. Ah, too soon. But you can see it's accessing the sound in real time. There's no audio delay. There's no gameplay delay. Performing exactly like it should. Well, even better so really than if it was playing by disc. Oh, that was close. Bastard. I fucking hate. I love this. I still maintain this is the best Mario Kart, but I fucking hate the blue shell. Little known fact: if you press up there while they're dragging behind your car, they get back onto your cart faster. Little tip there if we ever run this as a tournament at the events. Whoa, what am I doing? I'm rusty. I used to be the master at this game. Right. Avoid the big banana skin. That pulled me up a few places. Oh! Wasn't paying attention there. Looking at the camera instead of looking at me game. Invincible. Yeah, we'll have a bit of that. Have it. To even take out first place. Oh, right into the green shell. Oh god, I'm going a nightmare. I even got triple red shell then, completely wasted it. Move. Oh, I thought I'd be able to pull up one place. But yeah, works perfectly well as you can see. Yeah, no, I haven't got a soft reset activated, but now I believe if I press reset from here, I think it will just go straight back into the game. Yes, it just loads the game straight back if I press reset. So you have to hard power cycle it. But it's good that you can actually skip straight from that. Now you can actually go back to the GameCube interface at any point if you want to. You go down to, I think it's this one here for the door, and that kicks you out of Swiss and takes you back to the GameCube BIOS. So from here you can do your memory card management. Now I think if I go to memory card, it'll show it's corrupted because oh no, it's actually kept in this time. Oh, and it's actually kept my Swiss in it this time. Now, when I did that before, it actually corrupted my memory card and I tried to save my settings. So I stand corrected. Ignore everything I just said, guys. I've formatted my memory card and I've saved my settings to my memory card, and it's actually saved it as a separate game save. Maybe because I've now got other game saves already set up on here prior to this. Maybe that's why it's allowed me to do it now. When I was trying to save my settings to this memory card when it was empty and I just formatted it, it would corrupt it every time. So yeah, I've got a few game saves on there. It's now actually saved my Swiss settings, so I'm quite happy about that. So ignore my advice there. Don't bother with an SD to SP2. Seems to work perfectly well. And the good news is this is a 128 megabyte memory card as well. So I've got like 200 odd games on here. I've got more than enough game save space to just use one memory card for all my saves. Yeah, I started a double dash save a couple of weeks ago, and a tube slider one as well. Also, I'm messing around with F-Zero GX and a couple of others. So yeah, I will try the in-game reset actually. So I'll come out of that, and I think I do need to power cycle it now to go back to the menu. So we'll mess with a few of the settings now then, Andy. Since how that's worked, I will save some of my settings. So I'll keep it as stereo, keep all that the same. In-game reset, right? Well, so what do I need to set here, Andy? IGR reboot in-game reset.dol. I don't know if that file is actually on here by default. Or reboot. We'll leave that as that anyway. I'll change the file browser type now. I'll leave the file browser type as it is. I quite like it the way it is. Right, it does need to be IGR.dol. Right, I'll do that then. And I'll mess around with some of the other settings while I'm here then. Can't set up network settings yet because I don't have my network card, network adapter installed. Don't need any of these features. Force video mode, no, I'll leave that as is because it can only display interlaced anyway. Leave that, I won't do force widescreen. Yeah, I'll leave all those as they are. We'll hit save and exit. It's now saving that fine, thankfully. Do you know what the in-game reset command is off the top of your head, Andy? I think the reset setting takes you back to menu if you hit the reset button. Ah, I see. So yeah, I get you. Right. So let's boot up Crazy Taxi, eh? Now, I don't know if it will actually allow me to save different regions to the memory card. If I'm not mistaken, from what I know about running the freeloader to load the different regions, it does say not to save different regions saves on one memory card. So maybe that has got something to do with it. It could be that I was trying to save European games on with American games or something like that. LRBA and start. Right, I'll try that. It's difficult for me to do because I haven't got two good hands, but we'll load up Crazy Taxi and we'll try that once it's loaded into the game. But again, you can see the loading times on this, guys, is just way quicker than you get with a disc. And obviously resetting it just takes you straight back to the title screen, which is good as well. There you go, saved a save game. Right, now if I try the in-game reset, so you reckon it's LRB, A and start, so let's try that. No, I don't think it's that, mate. It doesn't seem to be anyway. I've enabled expert though by holding the L and R buttons. Right, I'm not going to go into the game because I'll get a copyright flag on YouTube for the credit for the in-game music. B and R and Z and D-pad down. So B R Z D-pad down. Apparently. Oh, I think you could be right, mate. Ah, but then we get that. Hmm. So it does work, but that's what I'm getting. So let me change the setting and get rid of IGR.dol and see, check that other setting and just see if it goes to reset and see if that works better. So in-game reset. I'll swap that to the reboot one. We'll see if this changes anything. We'll load Crazy Taxi again for consistency. So let's find it down here. There we go. Right, load Crazy Taxi back up. You need the IGR doll on the card and switch. Yeah, I have got it. I think it's because you can actually set the IGR doll to redirect. You can edit the text file, I think, and you can change it to redirect to somewhere else. But if in-game reset's working, let's get to the title screen again. And then I'll try it again. It's also loading my save, which is a good point, a good thing. So yeah, it's working, Andy. But I mean, as you can see, it's definitely working because it's resetting the system. But it's then saying the disk could not be read. So whether it's trying some kind of custom command, I'm not entirely sure. So there, I knew there was something that was stopping me using the in-game reset. It depends on the game, I think, as well. Not all games support it, but yeah, it looks like we've got a little bit of a problem with that. So I'll read into that anyway, and I'll get the lowdown on that at another time. But yeah, good to know that I've got the options there. At least now I can say my options, which is nice. So yeah, um, the one thing I did want to cover on this, I mean, all of these games work perfectly fine. You've seen one game, you've seen them all. I'll load them up for a little bit of background, and I'll go with. In fact, yeah, we'll go with that because that's what I started with, and I do love the game. And we were just talking about it anyway, right? F-Zero GX. It's going to bring me on to what I wanted to talk about. The one reason I was waiting for a flash loading solution for the GameCube is if you think back to my Wii modifying video, I talked about on there obviously the fact that you can load GameCube games using USB loader GX, and one of the things you could actually load was the Triforce arcade games. Now, a lot of people have been wondering about this, and I was wondering. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the answers I needed at the time. I was saying, yeah, it's great that you can play the Triforce arcade games. Those are Mario Kart Arcade GP1, Mario Kart Arcade GP2, F-Zero AX, and Virtua Striker 2003. It's awesome that you can play the arcade versions on a Wii, but the way it works on the Wii is it uses the Nintendo Don't emulator, which is basically like an interface that allows to launch GameCube games. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, the Triforce arcade games, the hardware, it was a joint venture with Namco, Nintendo, and Sega, and it was like a hardware standard they wanted to carry forward and use for a lot of games. It was used for a lot of games, but a lot of arcade games in Japan that were like Redemption or Strange Things. I believe there was a Donkey Kong, some kind of sticker making thing, and like a prize machine that used it. But for a few games, it used the Triforce arcade hardware. Now, the Triforce arcade hardware was supposedly identical to the GameCube. Well, for all intents and purposes, apart from certain inputs and outputs and things like that, it's supposed to be identical to the GameCube. And of course, those arcade games were virtually identical. F-Zero's GX is a case in point. F-Zero GX and F-Zero AX, which is the arcade game, are basically the same game. They're running the same resolutions, they use the same cars, use all the same assets. It's basically used on the same hardware. In fact, you can actually activate cheats on the GameCube version which will change the title screen to read F-Zero AX, which is the arcade game, because most of the files from the arcade game, from when they were making the home version and the arcade version, were basically left in the game. So there's a couple of tracks you can still play from the arcade that are exclusive to the arcade. The difficulty's ramped up, but not all of the features are there. But basically, it's the same game. So the Triforce spec was thought to be the same as a GameCube. However, when you try to launch, it will recognise if you drop on a Triforce ISO onto here, like Mario Kart Arcade GP or F-Zero AX, it will try to load them, but when you try to load them, it just goes to a blank screen. The reason being is it turns out the arcade hardware for Triforce is actually closer to that of the Wii. The Wii itself is actually a GameCube with a few extra things slapped on. It wasn't massively more advanced than the GameCube. It just had supported a few more higher resolutions, it had a few more colours, probably had bigger video memory and things like that. But basically, it was just a souped-up GameCube. Now, the Triforce arcade hardware was based on the GameCube, but it had a few extra tweaks, just like the Wii did. So I really wanted it to be the case that I could play the arcade games natively right here on a GameCube. But people have tried it and they've worked out that it can't be done. And the main reason being the arcade Triforce hardware not only do they have a few in and out readings that they haven't fully accounted for, the arcade has actually got a bigger video memory, bigger RAM, and a few other things that the GameCube just doesn't have. So I don't think there's any way to actually force those games to run on here. Even though F-Zero GX is virtually identical to AX, I believe the AX ISO makes checks for the video memory and accesses the video memory and things in a way that the GameCube it's impossible for it to do. So that's why it just won't work. People might work out a hack in the future. I don't know. But thankfully we can at least play those games on the Wii. I was just hoping that maybe you'd be able to add them onto here and put the Triforce arcade games on here. It was one of the first things I tried and I was gutted, but it doesn't work. So Mario Kart Arcade GP 1 and 2 don't work. F-Zero AX doesn't work, and neither does Virtua Striker 2003, unfortunately. It's a damn shame, but at least if you have got a Wii and you have got a soft modded Wii, you can play those games, and thankfully you can use a GameCube controller to play them. So you do have proper analog control for those racing games. And you know, if you want to play F-Zero AX, you can do it on there. The biggest advantage will be the Mario Kart Arcade GP games. But yeah, just a little bit of a sad point there. But for anybody who was wondering, no, unfortunately, you can't run Triforce games on the GC Loader. You can't run them on the GameCube at all, unfortunately. So yeah, that's the GC Loader PNP. Fantastic device. I mean, I'm going to summarise now because we're coming up to an hour. Yeah, a brilliant device. Totally recommend it. I believe they're still creating the device in batches at the moment. So you basically need to pre-order your device on spec. They were doing the GC Loader, which is the soldered version, and the PNP, and they were going to offer both. But I have a feeling the non-PNP will basically become defunct, even if it's a few quid cheaper, because nobody's going to go down that road when you've got one that just plugs straight in instead. So if you want to, I mean, check it out. Go to Google. Can't remember the name of the manufacturer now, but go to GC Loader and you'll find the GC Loader PNP. Try and jump on the pre-order. Get into the next batch. I believe the next batch, much like the next batch of Saturn drives, is going to be ready for the autumn time. So if you get yourself in now, jump on the pre-orders. Hopefully you'll be able to get one in time to modify your GameCube in time for Christmas. Get on the Dreamcast one for Terror Onion as well, and hopefully you'll be able to do your Saturn as well. So yeah, you can get the GC Loader now. Costs you about 90 quid. Going to cost you about 20 or 30 quid if you want the nice, in tray 3D printed thing. I do highly recommend it. It's not showing so well on camera. It looks like it's a completely different colour, but it is black. It's just that it's catching some of the light weird off the TV and off the ceiling. It is completely black. But yeah, you can get it colour coded to your Wii to match, and I highly recommend that you do. It's the ideal way to play GameCube games now, and I can see a lot more people taking this up now they've seen it proved, you know, on a lot of people's videos like my own. So yeah, go and check it out. I think that's about it as far as the GC Loader goes. There's not much more to show you on that front. It does run all regions, but I haven't got those to hand right now. But what I can tell you is that it's a fantastic device, and that is now the last of my main consoles to be modded. I'll be focusing on more obscure stuff from now on. But it looks like the missus is home anyway, so I'm going to be going and chilling for the rest of the evening now, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be back very soon with something new. I'll try and look at some new devices. I've got some fixes coming up for systems that I haven't had working at all, and I'll try and cover those. And there's the cue for me to go. The dogs have started off. So anyway, take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your evening, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video.